Welcome, everyone. We're just gonna give it a few minutes so that all of our attendees can trickle in. Thank you for joining us. Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more seconds. It is 6 and we do like to start promptly, but we realize that there might be some logins that are happening. So we're just gonna wait a few more moments. Thank you for joining us all. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for finding the time to join us tonight and visiting today's webinar. I'm going to shut my door just a moment. My name is Amber Luttrell. I am the Public Information Officer for the Erie Police Department. And with me today is several people. First of all would be Chief Kim Stewart, Deputy Chief Lee Mathis, Commander Mike Hafley, and Officer Connor Williard. I'm going to start out first with some housekeeping items. Tonight we'll be presenting on the research for the K9 for an enhanced community safety tool, being a K9 unit. This webinar will be recorded. It's uploaded to our webpage, hopefully tomorrow. That would be on the homepage under our calendar event. That's erieco.gov. After the brief presentation, I'm going to read off any of the questions that you're able to type into the system. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will answer those questions to the best of our ability. Invite you to leave us any comments, and you can do that via email. On our webpage are all those information points on how to email us. And without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Chief Stewart. She just has a few comments.
Good evening. I am Chief Kim Stewart, and I want to thank those of you who are joining us tonight. I promise you are in for a doggone good time. As the town continues to grow, we're at the Erie PD believe we need to increase our community safety tools. One way is by adding a police K9 unit. To speak about this program, I would like to introduce Commander Mike Hafley, who has been dogged with me in his approach for establishing a K9 program. So take it away, Commander Hafley.
Good evening. Yeah, we just want to talk a little bit this evening about our proposal and why we think that a K9 team would be good for the department. We've put together already a directive for the department of basic rules of how the K9 unit would be handled within the department, what the expectations would be. We've had our review panel take a look at that directive as well and give us a thumbs up on that. And we have an officer who has had extensive experience really with training dogs already. So Connor Williard is one of our SROs right now, but he's been with the department for a little over 3 years. And prior to that, he was a full-time dog trainer. So I will hand it off to Officer Williard to talk a little bit about the program.
Thanks, Commander. So yes, I am Officer Connor Williard. Like Commander Hafley said, been with the department a little over 3 years. Currently assigned as a school resource officer, was at Erie Middle School for 2 school years. Now I'm at Erie High School. What was alluded to briefly before is before I became an officer, I was a professional dog trainer for about 6 years. Got into it when I was training my personal dog and just had a huge interest in training dogs and dog behavior and all of that. So really took an interest in that. And after I came back from college, found a career with a local dog training company that's nationally franchised. Spent about 6 years with them, and we grew the business from 2 people to about 15 employees. I've seen and trained probably 1,000+ dogs in that 6 years. So I have extensive, experience in that realm already. While I was training dogs, I also served, and I'm still currently serving as a board member, I guess, for the Longmont Police K9 Association, where we raise funds for Longmont's K9 department, and just support them with kind of whatever they need, done demonstrations, community outreach, all of that stuff. So police canines and their needs and starting a program is definitely not new to me. So I'm excited and honored to be able to give you guys this presentation as we move forward. So as we start with the presentation, we're going to go over what the benefits can be for our department and our community, as well as some of the research that's been done that shows how efficient adding a canine unit can be. So we'll start with some of the benefits, and these are just a few of the ones that we've identified. Officer safety is a huge one. A dog is just another tool that we can use to enhance that officer safety. Going into buildings of the unknown, when you don't know what's in there or who's in there at night when an alarm's going off, being able to add a canine to that mix where they're using their nose instead of eyesight and can potentially locate a suspect before an officer can is huge for us. The other thing is, like I said, it's just another tool, and it's an actual tool that we have control over. We have less lethal options, pepper spray, taser, less lethal shotgun, those types of items. But when you pull the trigger on any of those, that you're committed. With a canine, when you send a canine, potentially you're able to stop them if you need to. If somebody surrenders after you send that dog, you're able to stop them and prevent the two from interacting, which is important. It's also no surprise to anybody if you've watched the news that fentanyl and narcotics use in the state of Colorado and just in the nation in general is increasing. The benefits of a canine is also drug interdiction, being able to prevent narcotics and illegal substances from getting in our community, stopping them at our borders, being able to prevent them from getting to our schools, our kids, our community members. So those are just a few of the benefits. The other thing is canine units and canines in general usually have huge community involvement. We want people to be able to see the dog, know what the dog does, get out there in the community and showcase the skills of the handler and the dog. So it's a lot of fun for the community to be involved and see what's going on. The other thing that canines allow us to do is suspect compliance. For whatever reason, you have, I'm a big guy, big officer, but you bring out a little 75-pound dog that's barking and growling at somebody when they're not being compliant. Again, it goes into officer safety. Suspect compliance is huge. I'm going to show you a slide later on in the presentation that shows you suspect surrenders when that suspect is being confrontational, acting like they might physically harm an officer or the community members, and show you kind of statistics on having a canine also brings suspect compliance as we move forward. So a time commitment that we're looking at for the handler and the dog. We are committed, when we do this program, to making it the best program we possibly can. And in that comes training, being able to make sure the dog is performing at a high level, make sure the handler is performing at a high level. That all starts with a training program that usually they can range anywhere from 6 weeks to 13 weeks, as well as ongoing training with regional groups, with departments that already have canine units. And a lot of those agencies in our area train on Wednesdays, and there's a group of them, and locations vary, but they're all fairly local. So an officer or a handler and a canine usually train for approximately 8 to 10 hours, 1 day a week. And there's plenty of ongoing training that goes on throughout the week, but you get one dedicated day that you can really focus on honing those skills, making sure that the handler and the canine are performing at those high levels that our community deserves and the department expects. The other thing is that with there being only one canine that we're looking at right now, that canine officer is going to be on call. So we can still benefit from having our own officer respond to calls if we need them instead of calling another agency. One thing that does for us is when we have an officer that we can call that's our own, that works with us, that we know how each other works. When we're calling an officer from another department to bring a canine potentially, that relationship and that knowing what each other does, that is hindered a little bit by doing that. So that is a benefit to us and the community. What we envision for the canine program, it would be a dual purpose canine. Dual purpose just stands for the dog does two things. One, we were looking at a narcotics dog, again, to go through that drug interdiction, to take those illegal substances off of our streets and protect our community. The other thing it will do is it'll be a patrol canine, which means it's able to assist in building searches, track missing persons, track suspects, and if needed, apprehension work. So part of the process would be coming up with clear directives. Like Commander Hafley stated earlier, we came up with a directive, it's approximately 10 pages, and it went through our directive task force. This is a task force of several community members that volunteer to oversee our directives, make suggestions on changes. That way we can be the best community partners we can and make sure that we're living up to the standards of our community. The other thing that would happen is the canine would reside with the handler. This gives them a chance to bond, build that relationship, and the responsibility of the canine would be with the handler. Now the town would purchase the canine, so the canine would be town property. Like I said, would live with the handler. The handler would have to live within a certain distance of Erie. That way we can still have the benefit if they're at home and being able to call them in. And just different things that our directives would state and clarify for us to make sure that everyone's working at proper levels. So there are training standards. These are just a few of the nationally recognized standards that are out there for police canines. And these are associations that hold the handler and the canine to high standards to make sure they're performing successfully and efficiently. And the canine would have to certify in certain aspects. If we're doing drug interdiction or narcotics, the dog would have to certify at least once a year. Usually it's twice a year to make sure that the canine's still upholding those standards, as well as the tracking and the patrol canine standards. The dog would have to certify that at least once a year, if not twice a year, again, just to make sure that we're upholding to those standards. Colorado has a Colorado Police Canine Association that has standards for police canines, and that is approved by the Colorado Post, which also is the governing board for officers and upholds our standards and our certifications. It's also supported by the Colorado Chiefs of Police and Sheriff's Associations. So that is a certification that we would absolutely obtain to make sure that we are performing as expected. Now, I talked a little bit about some of the scenarios and the data that's out there that shows what can be the benefit to the officers and the community. So there was a research study done called the Wolf Building Search Study. And what it did is it researched teams of officers, 2 to 3 team officers that went in and cleared buildings, and a canine handler team that went in and cleared the same buildings. And what we saw, they went from small buildings, 5,000 square feet, to very large buildings, 138,000 square feet. And what we saw as the building got larger, the officer teams were, their accuracy went down. And as you can see here, that their accuracy was decent for the 5,000 square foot building for the officers, dead on for 11,000 square foot. As we got into that 40,000 square foot range, it dropped just under 50% that the officer teams were able to locate suspects. And as we got into the very large building, 138,000 square feet, the accuracy for the officer teams dropped to 28% of the time they were able to locate the suspect in the building. As you can see for the canine team accuracy, it stayed above 80% the entire time. 5,000 square foot, 100%, 11,000 and 138,000 square feet, 100% of the time, the canine teams were able to locate the suspects. The 40,000 square foot building was a water treatment plant with lots of chemicals. And so there was a little asterisk there that just stated that chemicals and different smells obviously distract the canine or can just inhibit their ability a little bit to lock onto the proper scent. But you can see there, they still performed above 80%, which the officers only did twice in their scenarios. So you can see here, suspects hidden were 29. The K9 teams found 27 of those. Again, 29 for the officer teams, and the officers were only able to find 17 of those suspects. Again, we talk about officer safety, not knowing where people are hidden, and then we talk about protection for our community. And if we're leaving 12 suspects in unlocked buildings that we were unable to find, we owe it to our community to make sure that we're giving them the best service possible in locating suspects and making sure that people are being apprehended. Again, we want to make sure that we're performing at the highest standards for our community, what you guys expect and what we expect of our officers. So again, a little bit more data here. This just goes into the efficiency of the K9 teams compared to the officer teams. On average, it took officer teams a little over about 20 minutes at least to clear buildings. As you can see, the buildings got larger, the times got larger. With that 138,000 square foot facility, it took the officers a little over 2 hours to be able to clear that building. And as you saw on the prior slide, they were only 28% accurate. So it took them 2 hours to clear that building on average, and they only found the suspect 28% of the time. As you can see with the K9 teams, the longest that it took them was 15 minutes. Officer teams were not able to perform under 15 minutes with their average. Just even the small buildings took them 20 minutes and 18 minutes. So you can see there the efficiency and what it gives to a small department when we have 3 to 4 officers on a shift. When one of those is a canine handler, we're able to clear buildings a lot faster, clear alarm calls a lot faster and a lot more safely than we would with just the officer teams. And then you have the degree of certainty, which was just asked of the K9 teams and the officer teams what they believed. 5 being that they were completely uncertain that they found the proper suspects. 1 being that they were dead on. They knew that they found the suspects, that were in that building. For the K9 teams, they never went above 2. They were always fairly certain that they found the proper number of suspects and the people that were in that building. Where the officers, again, as the building got larger, there's just a lot of places to look. They became more and more uncertain. And you can tell, again, by the prior slide that uncertainty was warranted. 28% again with that large building. So while I was doing my research and trying to develop this program, come up with directives and just statistics, I took this, I was able to talk to an agency that has K9s, and they do have 3 K9s, and this is a neighboring agency. It borders us directly. And these were just some of their statistics from January of 2022 to the beginning of July 7th, when I spoke to them. So in about 6 months, these were their statistics using 3 dogs that they were able to achieve. So narcotics and a lot of the narcotics and the firearms and the cash came off of traffic stops. Just making those regular contacts that we make every day, and just having a dog that's able to locate, like I said, illegal substances gives us a huge benefit. The numbers are staggering. Over 1,400 grams of meth were seized. Over 1,000 grams of cocaine were seized. 118 grams of fentanyl and 110 pills of fentanyl. We all know the dangers of fentanyl and what it's doing to our community and our surrounding communities and how dangerous it is. And then 26 grams of heroin. That's a large number for heroin. Heroin is hard to find. So that is still an impressive number. With that, firearms, they found 27 firearms in the vehicle. Most of these coincided with the drug finds as well. Of those 27 firearms, 7 of those were stolen. And I'm sure, we all know that people that commit crimes are usually high on some kind of illegal substance, and they're usually not unarmed. It's just the nature of the business. So that's huge. And then just over $6,000 in seized cash, and that was one traffic stop, one bust, and that accompanied the fentanyl. Their deployments, they are very active with their K9 program and what they expect of their K9 officers. So their largest deployments in a span of 3 weeks this year, they had 90 deployments. Again, that's 3 dogs, so that is a lot. Just between July, the beginning of July and the middle of July, there, July 7th to July 24th, they had 40 deployments, and that's about on average for them, is what they said. So what I was talking to before with the surrenders and using that dog as a suspect compliance tool. So 22, they had the dog come out 22 times for possible apprehension for suspects that were non-compliant, or track suspects that have run from the crime scene and they were able to find. So 22 of those, 22 times those dogs were deployed for those types of scenarios. 19 of the 22 were suspect surrenders. They gave up willingly. They did not fight officers. They surrendered. Officers were able to safely take them into custody. Of the 22 times, 3 of those did result in canine bites, where the canine apprehended the suspect. Most of those times for those canine bites were stolen vehicles, which, as you guys know, Colorado leads the country in stolen vehicles, and Erie is no exception. We have our fair share of vehicles that get stolen. So this is definitely a real problem that we have in these situations. Canines were able to help the officers because each of those times for the stolen vehicles, for those 3 bites, the suspect was actively fighting officers, and the officers were able to send the canine and ended that struggle within seconds. Again, talking about that officer safety and community safety. A lot of people ask about court precedent and just what rules a canine for law enforcement and what our directives follow. Court precedent is one of those things that comes from situations where somebody usually made a bad decision, and now we have court precedent to help clear things up. When we have court precedent, it makes our jobs easier because we have guidelines that we have to follow now. We have clear rules that say, hey, do this, don't do this. So these are just a few of the important ones that govern canine use for law enforcement. Graham v. Connor is a huge one. It talks about reasonableness. What's reasonable to send a canine? And that it's not just about canine, it's about everything that an officer does in the use of force. What's reasonable? So if you guys are interested, please look at any of these cases, and it explains in a lot more detail what's expected from officers when utilizing a canine. It's what we used when we created our directives, and we want to live up to these standards. So that does it for kind of my presentation and the information I have. I am more than happy to take questions and answer any questions you guys may have as we continue this conversation. And then I think the last side here is a few of our dogs. You have Deputy Chief Mathis there with his dog Archie, and you have Chief Kim Stewart with her Jack Russell Tommy, and then those 3 dogs in the middle, those are all 3 my dogs, Ember, Gunner, and Ajax, doing some pretty cool stuff. So thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Well done, Officer Williard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. There's one other dog that's not pictured, and I just wondered if maybe Commander Hafley could take a moment to show his dog that is the largest dog I've ever seen in real life. Definitely a horse. Oh, yes, beautiful. I love it. I don't see any questions just yet. Just a reminder that the Q&A icon is at the bottom of your screen for Zoom. Let's see. Can I ask any questions that you haven't covered? Officer Williard, are there any incidents that have occurred recently that could have benefited from a canine deployment?
Yeah, so there's several incidents in the past year or 2 where we have actually called canines from neighboring agencies to come help us. And in that event, it just takes time to get them which time hinders us in some instances. So there, I believe since 2017, there have been at least 10 times where we have needed a canine and either needed a request from a neighboring agency or just were unable to get them because they just weren't on at the time. Again, which just deters us, or doesn't deter us, but it hinders us in providing the best service we can when it comes to finding missing people or locating suspects for our community.
And every second counts when we're in those, for sure. Let's see. And I think you already covered why you're passionate about it. It's your connection, it's your background, it's
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, animals was always something I was interested in. Didn't matter what the animal was. Then as I got older, I just found that nice little niche with dogs, and just being able to find an interest in their behavior and why they did the stuff they did, and change their behavior for if they're aggressive dogs or whatnot, and just help people bond with their dogs. I had a huge interest in, and then becoming a police officer, I found you can ask anyone in this department, and including command staff, that I bug them constantly about the benefits of a canine and what they can do for us as a department and for our community. So it's something I've been passionate about since I've started.
well done. Did you know that Friday is National Dog Day?
I did learn that.
I did, because I asked for pictures from everyone in the department. So stay tuned to our social media so that you can see for yourself the pictures that of all of our family, all of our canine family. So I think that does it, unless there's any last minute questions. I don't see them coming in. So that tells me that you know how to find us, which could be at our website, erieco.gov /police. And on that right-hand side, there's ways to email us. Of course, we're on social media. Oh, I got a question. Okay, DC. Take it away. What's your question, sir?
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and not making us chase our tails over a bunch of questions. We appreciate the faith you have in our department, and we really are excited about possibly bringing Erie's first canine to the community. We think it'll help with community safety, officer safety, and just be a great program for the entire community.
Well said. They may have each had a code word too they were assigned to say. So if you didn't catch those, you can watch it again. All right. Thank you, everyone, for oh, I have a question. No, it's not a question, but it's a thank you for your passion and efforts to make this happen for our community.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, everyone have a great night and enjoy your evening, and we'll see you at the next talk that we might have. Thank you. Bye-bye.